Good morning. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Maritime Transportation, Power and Energy Utilities, and Emergency Response is now called to order at 9:02 a.m. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets via electronic mail on September 9th of 2019, with a second notice provided on September 14th of 2019. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. Notices of invitation were sent to the members of the Homeland Security Council. The agenda for today's public hearing is to hear and accept testimony on Bill number 62-35 COR, the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Modernization Act of 2019, an act to add a new Article 13.1 to Title V GCA Chapter 1, Division 1 to create the Guam Office of Homeland Security, and further amend Title 10, Chapter 65, introduced by Senator William M. Castro. And before we begin testimony on this morning's hearing, I would like to recognize the bill's author, Senator Will Castro, and afford him the opportunity for his opening statement on the bill. Senator?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, Sejusmasi for scheduling the bill to be heard. I appreciate it. I know that you made every endeavor to attempt to schedule this before September 11th, as it probably would have had a much more symbolic purpose. However, we're here today, and I want to thank you and members of the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Maritime Transportation, Power, Energy Utilities, Emergency Response, and the general public for tuning in this morning for this public hearing. Again, I thank the Committee for hearing Bill number 62-35, the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Modernization Act of 2019. Just to be perfectly clear and upfront at the beginning, this is not meant to be a reorganization bill. Rather, this bill simply sets to codify what should already exist in executive order. However, there are a couple differences. First, the bill attempts to formally establish also the Marianas Regional Fusion Center. We know that MRFC operates under the direction of Homeland Security, and its purpose is to coordinate the exchange of criminal intelligence, threats, and hazards, as well as to facilitate local, regional, national, international, and regional communications, which may also include the Mariana Islands law enforcement entities, first responders, government, and private sector partners. The bill also identifies the creation of a division of cybersecurity within the Office of Homeland Security, whose function shall be the protection of information networks, hardware, software, and data from cyber attacks. I would also like to note, although that's the intent of the bill, as I had principally authored, I am open to further discussion with the administration, primarily the Homeland Security Advisor, on the technical aspects of the establishment of the Division of Cybersecurity, or I know the HSA is on its way. I was just informed by Adaloop's representative, or perhaps it may actually reside in another agency, but Mr. Chairman, we'll leave that up for further committee deliberation. That's the purpose of this public hearing. It's also to reaffirm the establishment of the Guam Emergency Management Advisory Council to advise and assist the governor and lieutenant governor on all aspects of Homeland Security, responsible for the development and implementation of Homeland Security purposes and policies. Mr. Chairman, in preparation for this hearing, I know that my staff and I have met with numerous Homeland Security officials, both current and past, and I find it necessary to state for the record, in order that should you consider and the committee should find amenable, a couple very significant substantive amendments to the statute. I know the HSA and his advisors, his federal partners, and I spent some time talking about this concept of, and forgive me for the lack of a better term, perhaps somebody who will be providing testimony can provide the right technical language, but this concept of procurement sovereignty, which would empower the Office of Homeland Security, if not the HSA and other representatives of the senior staff of the governor, to proceed with procurement activity because of the classified nature of those documents, the hardware, the software, and other types of activities that may warrant that kind of sovereignty. In addition to that, Mr. Chairman, I know there was extensive discussion about the need to address the tenure or the amount of time that people in the Fusion Center would be appointed to the Marianas Regional Fusion Center. And this has nothing to do with classification of service or protection of employment against the discretionary appointing authority of the person who has that authority. It's really meant to serve as an opportunity for these folks who have been invested with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of training and security clearance so that they can serve out the remainder of that term, 2 to 3 years. And whatever that time frame is has not yet been defined. But I needed to state that for the record so we can have a fruitful discussion before we amend the bill, if we're going to amend it, and before we act on it. So those were two of the major substantive issues that were brought up. The third is important, although not as substantive to the structure of the entity, I'm talking about Homeland Security, would be this concept of utilizing more technology that can be pushed or that can be pulled in terms of data collection and information sharing, in terms of the need to patch through our regional partners and work with our federal partners through the use of some kind of a platform, whatever is the best fit for Homeland Security in the territory. And Mr. Chairman, that in a nutshell is the Homeland Security Modernization Act as introduced. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you also to my colleague, Senator Pito Tulahi, for being here.
Thank you, Senator Castro. Yes, I'd like to recognize Senator Pito Tulahi, who's also joined us this morning. With that, I'd like to invite up the members of the public who are here to testify, who have signed up, beginning with Mr. Christopher Roberto, as well as Mr. George Sharfers, who's already seated, Benny Nicholas, all right, and we'll go in order of the sign-in sheet. So we'll begin first with Mr. Roberto. Please begin by introducing yourself for the record, and then you may begin your testimony.
Day, Manana Joe, Senator. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Senator Pito, my former boss at the Guam Police Department. Senator Will, good, close professional and personal friend. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come up here and speak on behalf of the intent of this bill. So, I have extensive experience in the matters associated with the intent of the bill. And as a matter of fact, part of it, I believe, stems from our initial engagement with the Marianas Conference that occurred about a year ago. And in it, we had discussed several of the priorities that were shared between our neighboring islands and ourselves, most especially because the borders that we share allows for the incursion of illicit materials that we all want to focus on as a priority, as one of the priorities within the community. Now, as Senator Will stated earlier, there are adjustments that need to be made on the nuts and bolts of the bill, but I believe that the overarching intent of it is good and it's sound for the island. Now, it validates the need to expand the importance of the MRFC and gives credence to those folks up there so that they can actually do the work that they do, as opposed to executive orders, which allows for, you spoke earlier of the tenure, Senator Castro. Yeah, we have challenges. As the former Assistant Port Police Chief, we have our own personnel issues. And so personnel always is a big matter when it comes to the area of law enforcement. So yes, it requires, from what I understand, or at least from my experience, it's been a 2-year tenure for our participating officers who took part in it. But although there's already a fusion center in the existence, those challenges associated with staffing can be passed on to these entities for them to figure out. It just solidifies the importance of the fusion center and the personnel who staff it. The other importance of the tenure of the folks there is because it provides for transitioning leadership to have continuity for all the work that has been done or is about to be done. It also provides for the cross-training and familiarization of the different agencies as they cross their jurisdictions in order to provide the services at the Fusion Center for the island. So, in a nutshell, that is the reason why I'm here. I believe in that there's a lot of good that can come out from this bill. Again, there's nuts and bolts to it that need to be worked out, but the overall arching intent of it, I support. And I ask you to move on and pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberto. Mr. Sinicolas, if you could begin with introducing yourself for the record.
Yes, good morning. My name is Benisa Nicolas. Thank you, Senator Castro, for introducing this bill and whoever are your sponsors with that. But I'd like to first say good morning to my good friend, si Senator Pido Talahi. Welcome back. Senator Ridgell, good morning. Ikinimpindek ko na nesti Homeland Security, apa na ma-create, matitunas di Amerika na pakai di 9/11 di New York. Bis kinimpindek ko nesti Homeland Security, maulik para maulik i-response and i-coordination para todo departamento or agencies, all the agencies that needs to be involved in the dealing with the security in case anything happen like that again. So thank you, Senator Castro, for introducing this legislation and bill. But my understanding again recently, because I just happened to get this information over the weekend, meeting Senator Castro there and the Karen Castro nalahan ni John Mami kick-off para unug ikad dito Mami nalahan para mayot sa thank you ni Matto dan todi man Matto na okasyon. Now, tatigwining i Homeland Security na italo, mekintasam dan si Tim Agun, gida panan direktor na Homeland Security. Pero sa nyo na na bill, pa-address coordination Homeland Security issue. Pero na right off the bat, kinimpindek ko na, mas maabansa na effectiveness esti Homeland Security Guam. Pero todo na involved with the organizational structure of the government of Guam. Executive branch, gobyerno, kongreso, then agencies, polisiya, militar, todo ni manibabaw nesti Homeland Security issues da ni emergency. And of course, imiot, law, esti pago na, for example, esti nigap, duro, flood, maliso. Itsalan waha, tisina, malofanaw, itsalan, maliso sa flooded. Pes, how do you para kini-ordinate? How do you para gaigigwihi da protehe tauto da munga na guamatmus? Or haptemano from prevent edu da mas maulig edu na chalan da munga na worry tauto ni gaiga gibisino or pompalofan pamatak o pompalofan pamaliso or nalan or hagat da manunyugun how tatalo puengi o masyafan na ora kuloro na gipuengi. How do you para minanit and how do you para o pinitehi sa itauta? Okay? Pesestigi kinimpindek ko na is the organizational structure and is the creation of the Homeland Security. Is to deal with all that nationally, locally. So my opinion is the executive branch, which is the governor of Guam, shall have that supreme authority on the protection of the people of Guam. We need to give her that authority again. If it's not there, make it so that the governor have that authority, full authority to be the supreme leader of our island's protection. Not have to rely on the military. The military should be answering to our governor and to our senators of Guam and the mayor. The people of Guam that elect you, we elect you to be our leaders. The military is not our leader. I welcome the military. I'm pro-military. Don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about the organizational structure. I am pro-military. I'm for the military. Okay? I welcome the military. There are a lot of benefits that come from the military for the people of Guam. I'm talking about organizational structure. The governor shall appoint these people that are going to be heading these security agencies. For example, the police department, she's appointing them. Homeland Security. And if the military comes in, or any federal agency, I understand also maybe there are what's called a cooperative working agreement. And so we need to make that better, but the governor shall be heading this and should have that authority to decide. So for example, maybe the one agency, Homeland Security, and another agency are working like advisors to each other. But when it comes to a decision that has to be made, that appointee of the governor or the governor shall have the final say on this, on the coordination and the authority. Because sometimes we see different agencies, you know, when you have the federal government, they have their boss from the states, and then you have the governors appointed from Guam. For example, the director of Homeland Security or Civil Defense, and you have these two agencies, for example, that are once appointed by the federal government, and who's the boss for this person? Of course, it's the federal government. But who's the boss for the Homeland Security guy is the governor of Guam. So when it comes to making that call, I believe that the governor of Guam shall have that final say. And we need to start, if that's not the case now, that's why I welcome this, and I'm thankful that you're introducing this, Senator, because this is very important. Because yes, we do need the military to help us, because you know there are so many things that people of Guam and the government of Guam cannot do without the military. So I welcome the military in that aspect. But I believe that when it comes to making the call, the governor of Guam, the legislature, our elected leaders shall have that final say. In line with this also issue, for example, on the natural disasters, emergency. Right now, there's an emergency in Inarahan and Maleso, especially with the flooding issue. How are we dealing this with the agency? How are we coordinating all these issues with our local government, the mayor? So what I am after here is to empower our mayor with more authority, more financial authority. I believe the legislature have their authority pretty much intact, you know, in dealing with the budget and legislation. But you have the power to make things better through legislation, which you are doing, and I thank you for doing that. So the other thing I want to ask you is please work among yourself to continue trying to better things for the people of Guam. And sometimes I see that the hands are being tied, you know, like the executive branch. I'm talking about the governor of Guam, our governor, who is supposed to have that executive power and authority. But through legislation in the past, I see legislation that is tying the hands of the governor. So please look into that and release some of that traba or godi, you know, utud itraba, basta matraba, basta manatraba. Na ay lugar igubit nakta. Da ucok di mana na sinana sa in Joko opinion lineo gosmal. Uliyaw gi conference gi fanogi or fanhita conference. First time nuli gobierno sumaga tuludia gi conference most of the time. Nang todo senator na si Ridgell. Sa hafa mampus gos importante stinay. Jadi gi na nutshell ita pata decide ni tau Guam hafa malagota pata tsogi. Kau malagit pata continuous the democratic system that are enhanced. Sa nigi gumubibin na. So pa ako na sige na tayo exalo magufu majoria i Kongreso matutsugi man na sinya pa tautawam. Peseningi minagofu na man inchechegui mani na sinan mido. Aku talu Senator Ridgell magofu ni un question na i power authority na tautawis ni man mabota para usetbi tautawam mani minaulik. Pes sinagi pininya matutsugi bentiloki tautana man na sinanya lo hagu jahoji bidadamu loki ni un question na para siguro na mani matutsugi mas maulik pa tautawam. Kalau na nesti price na ini 3 kahulo. Pes magofu nene bidadamu dan ya tali minggu kata Senator Pido okay maulik bidadanya toruri majoria ni Kongreso maulik Guam man maulik tanah siga sumogi man nina sinata pa tanah mas maulik pesijus masi senators nesti keke chugi tagospitan testi lokki na idota security our island pesistigi lini eo na wahaginin no question na houses ti para o ginibet na bikin imprendek ko totogwam na esti mananain esti organizational structure executive branch para o manage Guam pes esti when it comes to homeland security gobernata debut mananain daw maulig esti pinamimili po ma-coordinate tourist modern issues. Yes, ano, si Diyos masi, da pa na Clara, ungan usa poputi esti na bill number 62-35-02. I'm supporting it and of course I hope that you will take into consideration the positive comments that I've made and some of the recommendations. But thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. San Nicolas. Mr. Charfers, please begin by introducing yourself.
Talogans and Mutunas Izus, Senator Ridgell, Senator Talahi, and Senator Castro. Good morning, and good morning to all the senators of the 35th Guam Legislature. Good morning to everyone in presence. Gentlemen, I am George L. Charfers Jr. I was born and raised in the village of Malesso. I have been a lifelong resident of our beautiful island of Guam. I retired from the U.S. Army as a colonel in 2017 after serving for over 30 years in the military and the Guam National Guard. I was also appointed by Governor Eddie B. Calvo as the Guam Homeland Security in April of 2017 and served until January of 2019. Gentlemen, in those 2 careers, I have seen the best and worst of humanity and Mother Nature. And from that experience, I have formed the personal and professional concept of pray for the best and continually prepare for the worst. I am now here to provide my support of Bill 62-35, and I believe there are 175,000 reasons why that bill needs to be passed. Although this bill is a long time coming, it is very much a step in the right direction and for the right purposes. While I believe we as an island are very much resilient and experienced in preparing for and recovering from disasters and threats, we must never rest on our laurels. This is because the enemy, both natural and man-made, does not sleep and is constantly adapting. In light of that, we always need to adjust the concept and procedures for emergency management. And I believe that this bill does just that. In my opinion, everyone is an emergency manager at whatever level they are at. But those charged to lead at the highest levels need to provide for the purpose, direction, and motivation to overcome and recover from any emergency or threat to our island and nation and our people. Our actions in any emergency situation need to be coordinated, cohesive, and effective because while it is often said that every disaster is a political one, we must always put those aside to overcome and recover in the best and shortest time possible. This is what our people expect and deserve. I believe this bill moves us towards that thought, and I highly recommend it be passed into law. Thank you for allowing me to testify, and may God bless America. May God bless our beautiful islands. I am now available for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Charfus, and thank you to everyone on this panel for your testimony. I'd like to open it up now to my colleagues to afford them the opportunity to ask questions of this panel, if you could remain seated, beginning with Senator Talahi.
Thank you very much for your attendance, and thank you very much for attending this session. Before I share some of my thoughts, I just want to call up Tim. Can you come up to the front, please? Because I have some questions for you regarding the bill. And as the...
I'll have him come up and testify after this panel.
Oh, no, but I wanted to ask him some question regarding some of the missing things in the bill. Go ahead and have a chair, and then Senator Ridgell is going to go ahead and take over. But I just wanted to point out several things, because I was the director for Guam Civil Defense at the time, and I was there for 8 years. But I was wondering, when I was looking at this bill, what happened to the, what we call the RAC, the Response Activity Coordinator, because, you know, the Response Activity Coordinator is your working people whenever we have some kind of a disaster, and I don't see it on the bill.
Senator, thank you for that. I would have to take a look at that further. I'm not aware of what happened before the Response Activity Coordinator. We have, in our EOC, we have all representatives from each agency, which are in turn called the RACs. So we have that currently existing in the EOC.
And the reason why I asked that, because the most important, there's three individuals that are very important to be part of the RAC. And that one of that is the Department of Education Superintendent or representative from DOE. And because of that, whenever we have a disaster, you know, in the coordination of opening the shelters and things like that, the superintendent of the Department of Education have to say so on giving out the information. When are we going to open? When are we going to close? And how many people can we put into that shelter? So that's very important. And I was just wondering why is the RAC still in existence? Because you should have the list of almost all the agencies within the government of Guam, especially DOE. And DOE is very important. And also the Red Cross. I don't see the Red Cross on this bill. And the Red Cross is the primary agency that you coordinate with on any disaster, especially if we're going to have to go through the federal funding and things like that, on the presidential declaration and things like that. It is very important that we insert that on the bill. And will Senator Castro, maybe when we get into the session, in our session, maybe you can include the Department of Education on this bill, because it's very vital that we have DOE superintendent in there. Okay, and that's about it. And I want to thank the Colonel and everybody else for being with us today, because I just got in. I was over in the PI due to medical for my wife, but I got in Saturday morning. So I was prepared. When I was looking at the bill, I said, there's no way that I'm going to miss this one, because I have several things that I want to put on this on the session floor regarding the bill itself. It is a bill that is very, very good, I would say, and it's like what the Colonel has said. It's a long time coming, but there's several things that are missing on this bill. That is part of the most important aspects of agencies that are in support of any declaration. Thank you very much.
If I may, Senator Talahi, in our comprehensive emergency management plan, the CAMP, we have in there the listing of all the ESFs, our emergencies sections in the EOC, and it lists all your concerns. If you'd like, we can send you a copy of that.
Okay, please.
We have all the agencies, including Red Cross, Guam Public School System, GPSS, right? So we are currently also working with Task Force for the shelters, including Tier 1 and Tier 2. So if you'd like, sir, we can bring that, and I invite the committee to come to our agency and we can sit down and talk further.
One of the things that I experienced when I was the director is that whenever we have a disaster, we get inundated with all kinds of problems, situations, and things like that. And, you know, when I was there for 8 years, I wanted to really, because we don't have the Homeland Security advisor and things like that, and I believe you're in charge of civil defense, not the administrator of civil defense. You're in charge of civil defense. And one of the things that really kind of just, I get nightmares whenever I think of it, because, you know, we have a number of people attending some kind of ceremony and things like that. And sometimes I don't see the securities there with their metal detectors and things like that. And one of the things that you might want to consider, Tim, is to obligate Waterworks and the GPA to have a full-time security in those areas, especially our waters, because you don't see any security in some of our, you know, the water system that we have around here, and that's very important that we have, because one of these days they're gonna put those chemicals in there, and you know, everybody's gonna be affected. So I just recommend that we do something like that, and if you need the chairman's help in initiating that bill to make sure that we have those securities within our water aquifers and things like that, that would be good.
Understood, Senator. So again, as you mentioned, under Department of Homeland Security, the cybersecurity and infrastructure security, our office is currently trying to mirror that structure, and in my testimony I will clarify that. But we are working with GPA and GWA as part of their critical infrastructure security, not just cyber, but also for their remote sites, to ensure that, you know, like the copper theft and, of course, trying to poison the water or what have you, right, from bad actors in the community, if ever. So we are working on that actively. So I thank you for bringing that up, sir.
And I know that you're one of the top ranking enlisted in the Guard, and I know that the bulk of the money comes from the federal government. So maybe you can apply some of that money into affording our water resources and GPA, maybe requesting for additional money to place a 24-hour security in our system.
Yes, so that's one of the things that we are working with them. In fact, we're talking about installing CCTV cameras throughout the island for all their critical infrastructure to provide security. And those cameras will link over to Homeland Security State Warning Point, our watch desk, which is 24 hours. So that's something that we're currently working on. I know that when we sat down with the board, Chairman Joey Duenas and Mr. Beneventi and Tracy Limchiaco, we discussed this. They're all in favor of it. They have funding. We might be able to contribute. As you know, the funding source that we have with FEMA and Homeland Security is very limited, which at some point here, maybe in the near future, that we'll be at the table here requesting for support from the government of Guam, from the general fund.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, sorry for taking up your time, but I just wanted to code Tim up front so I can get this straightened out, so I can stop having those nightmares in the evenings, all the way up to the morning. So thank you very much, Tim. Right.
Thank you, Senator Talahi. And with that, Mr. Uggan, you are signed in to testify as well. Would you like to present your testimony? But before you begin, I'd also like to call up Mr. Charles Esteves as well who signed up for testimony. As for Mr. Roberto and Nicholas and Sharpers, you don't have to stay at the table if you'd like to return to your seats. Thank you. All right, Mr. Uggan, please begin by introducing yourself for the record, and then you may begin your testimony. Thank you.
Hafi and good morning. I'd like to thank you, Chairman Ridgell, Senator Castro, Senator Terlai, for allowing me to provide testimony on Bill 6235, the Homeland Security and Emergency Modernization Act of 2019. My name is Pierre Tim Uggan. That's the P. Tim Uggan. And I serve as the Homeland Security Advisor to the Governor of Guam, Lou Leon Guerrero, and I also am the alternate governor's authorized representative. I appear before you in general support of Bill 6235 with suggested amendments. I stand in support of any practical legislation which seeks to further the agency's ability to conduct critical, respective tasks and to remain a steady, enduring entity. The Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense is one of the most critical agencies as it relates to all hazards and threats to Guam. It is important the agency not be subject to change by withdrawal or amendment of an executive order. If passed into law, this bill would provide continuity of government operations by putting an easily understood structure in place that is not reliant upon existing executive orders. I would like to suggest recommendations as discussed to strengthen the proposed bill and to ensure that we are given the proper authority to carry out the actions in the bill's provisions. In Section 3, include verbiage providing the Office of Homeland Security during designated national disasters or catastrophic events as the lead coordinating agency for the purpose of synchronizing efforts in response to such emergencies. Today, this is already the general practice for the government of Guam. Section 5, change Division of Cybersecurity to the Division of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security, which is what we just discussed with Senator Terlahi. The division should include the ability to combat emerging threats to our networks and critical infrastructure. I also suggest the committee ensure that there is no conflict between the intent of this section and the underlying mission of the Office of Technology. At a minimum, our two entities should work in tandem and collaboration with one another with the goal of cybersecurity protection for all of Guam. Section 6. The bill refers to two separate councils, Guam Emergency Management Advisory Council and the existing Homeland Security Council. We recommend that a single advisory council to be named the Guam Homeland Security Emergency Management Council be contemplated in the legislation and that its membership be reduced to remove the Attorney General, Assistant Adjutant General for the Army and the Air, Environmental Protection Agency, Office of Technology, and the Mayor's Council of Guam. Under the proposed language, the Governor of Guam will have the ability to add any agency in the future proposed for removal at the Governor's discretion. On Section 6B, strike GEMA Advisor to Homeland Security Advisor. Under Section 7, we believe the intent of the legislation is structurally unify the operations of the Homeland Security and the Office of Civil Defense and clarify that the appointed Homeland Security Advisor remains responsible for the operations proposed in the new structure. We'd like to work further with the chairman and the committee, the author of the legislation, before the bill is further considered to ensure that Section 7 and the overall proposed legislation accomplish such tasks. We are pleased to be working with this committee to ensure that the true value of an emergency management agency is to withstand and conduct important tasks efficiently. We look forward to working with this committee as the bill moves forward. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak today, and just know that Guam is safe and secure.
Thank you, Mr. Uggan. Mr. Esteves, please begin with an introduction of yourself, and then you can begin your testimony. Thank you.
Hafaday, Senator Castro, Senator Ridgell, and Senator Chalahi. Thank you today for allowing me to submit written and oral testimony. My name is Charles Esteves. I am the Administrator for the Office of Civil Defense. I was appointed in 2015 and later became a member of the Classified Service. I am the legal or the head of the Office of Civil Defense as per Title 10, Chapter 65, Guam Code Annotated. I became classified a couple years ago, the first classified administrator for the Office of Civil Defense, and I'll go into detail why that's important in a minute. First, I want to say that I'm submitting written and oral testimony in support of Bill 62-35, the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Modernization Act of 2019. I fully support the codification of the Office of Homeland Security. It was something that myself and the previous Homeland Security Advisor, George Charfris, worked on with Senator Castro at the time in the 34th Guam Legislature. However, like the Homeland Security Advisor, Tim Muggan, I do have some recommended minor changes. The Guam Emergency Management Advisory Council should reflect the Guam Homeland Security Advisory Council. However, the purpose of the Guam Homeland Security Advisory Council and the Guam Emergency Management Advisory Council have two very distinct and separate roles. The Guam Homeland Security Advisory Council is more of a senior level executive type of council there to advise the governor on all Homeland Security and basically public safety issues. Whereas the Guam Emergency Management Advisory Council contains all our response activity coordinators. So if you look in Chapter 65, Section 65104, the Civil Defense Advisory Council, recommending, actually it's already in the proposed bill, the change to the Guam Emergency Management Advisory Council. And as Senator Chalahi, the information you requested, that's actually where the RACs are currently operating out of, the authority given to them. And inside Section 65104, they already have the Department of Education and also 8 members from civil organizations in support of emergency management, which is our volunteer organizations active in disasters, such as the Red Cross. I also fully support the creation of the Division of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency versus the Division of Cybersecurity to reflect the integrated mission of the physical and virtual aspects of critical infrastructure protection. I also support not the establishment, but the codification of the Mariana Regional Fusion Center to ensure that no future administrations try to remove the agency or their support for the agency for whatever reason, and it's enacted into law. The Fusion Center's mission is very important. As the 78th Regional Fusion Center, as part of the network of fusion centers, there is no other organization that you'll find that has the collection of members from different organizations whose sole purpose is to share information and put it into actionable intelligence for the purpose of saving lives, preventing attacks, and protecting the people. But my primary reason for coming here today is to talk about the modernization of the Office of Civil Defense. The Guam Civil Defense Act of 1951 can trace its roots to the Office of Civil Defense established by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1941, and the Federal Civil Defense Administration established by President Harry S. Truman on December 1st, 1950, through Executive Orders 8757 and 10186, respectively. Since 1950, the agency has gone through a series of changes. In 1958, the FCDA became the Office of Defense and Civilian Mobilization and continued to be an office within the Executive Office of the President. OCDM changed its name to the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization, and in 1961, the agency became the Office of Civil Defense and was reorganized under the Department of Defense. In 1964, the responsibility was given to the Department of the Army. And in 1979, President Jimmy Carter established the Federal Emergency Management Agency as a standalone position and the Federal Emergency Management Council through EO 12127 and 12148. In 2003, FEMA and 22 other federal agencies, programs, and offices were integrated into the newly formed U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Like the United States Emergency Management Agency, Guam's OCD has undergone similar changes. In 1998, OCD and the Office of Veterans Affairs were organized under the Department of Military Affairs through Public Law 24-298 and was repealed in 2005 through Public Law 28-46. Bill 62-35 seeks to further modernize the agency by updating our name. The renaming of our agency is significant because it demonstrates our change of mission from providing for the civil defense to our current mission of providing all hazards, all threats, emergency management to the island. I support the bill because it currently does not reorganize the agency under control of the Office of Homeland Security and continues to keep the agency under the direct control of the Governor of Guam. Keeping the agency as a standalone agency is important for two reasons: decreased bureaucracy and vetted leadership. Looking at DHS and FEMA case studies, the failed response during Hurricane Katrina and Sandy were due to the strained relationship between the two agencies. After the reorganization, FEMA's budget was cut, permanent federal positions were taken to staff positions in DHS, and political appointees with no experience were placed in the agency. The result was the loss of lives and mismanaged resources. After action reports demonstrate what happens when an agency is systematically undermined and caught up in red tape. OCD has been operating as a separate agency for over a decade with no major incidents. The second reason for not reorganizing the agency under direction or control of OHS is the lack of vetted leadership. The Homeland Security Advisor is the head of Homeland Security's unclassified appointed position. If GEMA were placed under control of OHS and the HSA, there should be a vetting process. The HSA currently does not go through a confirmation hearing because he or she is a special assistant to the governor. However, the OCD administrator is a classified position and must go through the Department of Administration rules and procedures for hiring, which includes rating candidate qualifications to determine eligibility. I have been blessed to have worked with and continue to work with great HSAs such as George Charfus and Tim Uggan. But I ask that we look at the position and not the person. As an unclassified appointee of no confirmation hearing, we never know who may be appointed to position. I do recommend, however, the elevation of the duties and responsibilities of the Guam Homeland Security Advisor be codified. The role of the HSA is akin to the President's National Security Advisor, also known as the Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs. The NSA, like the HSA, does not require confirmation by the Senate. Both the NSA and the HSA provide daily advice to the President and the Governor, respectively. To ensure the Governor receives the best advice, the HSA should have oversight over all public safety agencies, to include GEMA. Oversight does not translate to direct operational control. In this instance, oversight will ensure untethered access to information required for him or her to advise the Governor. Finally, I ask that GEMA remain the lead coordinating agency during emergencies under the operational oversight of the Office of Homeland Security, and that the relationship continue to move forward as it has been, at least in my tenure as the Administrator for the Office of Civil Defense over the past 5 years. So thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Esteves. I'd like to allow Senator Castro the opportunity now to ask any questions he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The importance of a name. You don't have to answer this, Mr. HSA, but Pierre, were you born in France? And I asked because I was born in Italy, and if my mother had her way, I would have been named Pasquale because I was born in Pasquale, Pazzulli, Italy. But my dad required that I be named William, so I doubt you'd vote for a Pasquale. But my point would be, although using humor as a segue, my point would be the subtleness of a name can make a world of a difference. And the bill does attempt to change Office of Civil Defense to the Office of Emergency Management, but it also seeks to, now with the input of the panel prior discussions with you, Mr. Uggan, to change the Division of Cybersecurity to be the Division of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure, or Critical Infrastructure, and we'll definitely make that change. And Mr. Chairman, that was my point. It wasn't necessarily a question. It was a rhetorical one for you if you were born in France. But I do have some follow-up comments, but I would like to defer to my chairman on border and the Chairman on Homeland before I proceed with my questions and statements.
Senator Chalahi?
Tim, we got you. The changes, the bill itself is a good bill, but we need to refine that bill and base what you have mentioned on some of the changes and the names and things like that. But let me get this straight. Are you, Mr. Stevens, are you telling us that the Homeland Security advisor should be confirmed, go through a confirmation hearing?
If agencies were placed under the direct operational control of the Office of Homeland Security, then, I believe that they should go through a vetting process similar, because then the role becomes less like the National Security Advisor and more like the Secretary of Homeland Security. When they created the Department of Homeland Security, they rolled up FEMA along with 22 other agencies underneath, and creating that secretary position to ensure that you have the right candidate for the job, they went through Senate confirmation. However, currently, the Homeland Security Advisor, like the National Security Advisor, does not go through confirmation. They are the principal advisors to the governor and the president.
Well, I'm just basing my thinking on just when I was the Director of Civil Defense for the 8 years. Usually before we select the candidate to run civil defense at the time, we usually base that on their qualification, the experience. And I know Jim, Tim has been still active in the military, and I know he's got the insight, the intelligence of just what to do. So I don't know, I just want to ask, what is the rationale of the difference between going through the record to really come up with the qualification and going to the confirmation hearing? Because if you go to the confirmation hearing, the things that they're going to ask you as a candidate is your qualification. So in the assessment, the initial assessment has to be a person that is really qualified before that person is appointed by the governor. And I don't see the rationale of going through the motion of confirmation hearing. Because sooner or later, the candidate or the person that's upholding that position, siyempre ang matumagi gini, the mafaisin ni kustiona, half experience mo, half sinod sogin na maulik para departamento. Pustisina na be kulan malilinig kilo na janggin para tanahano, ito sa todo, ito siya man maajik para direktor, ito siya po mania siya departamento gi gobernamento na maatan i-record niya sa tawza masyado na problema po madago halum sa jonggan no komprendia nagwahan na tawto gyudong na politika sa tinabanda unggan masyaf tay manu taatan parewa janggin main duko gi University of Guam jama punto para posisyon politika izulo ko na pio za unclassified to pos debit na klaro sti hafa na fundamento de por si janggin mapunta sa necessaryo na ma-confirm. Hafa differential na janggin manahano ni po ma-confirm kumu guiza magasezulo jasta mali record na. So it goes through the process of elimination janggin magical na. Posizul liko na parewa. Siyempre antes diu halum gina posisyon na. Siyempre maatan record na half siya experience na half tiningon na po di Homeland Security judge na laliko na janggin ejun recommenda na po matulay kay naan sa pagwa confirmation hearing eko sa goni anay mapunto para no direktor gajulo stabo gi policeman 18 anos po policeman za anay mali record to na todo na gayo mi oto 12 anos. Pos experienza gaigi tay mano pun sapoti jangingwa no de por si ta sucede na iran jus como keliko taga gua typhoon gua earthquake na siya ane direktor to eji 8.1 or 8.2 na earthquake gua hugi direktor Jaliliku na experience mas ta nisisita gini. Sa jangin ma ajikaw na para director, you see maatan hafa gradumo ko master's degree o pa doctor's degree. Luliliku, what I'm saying here is I think experience is actually overshadows education in this type of situation, as far as emergency managers. Sa jangin pag mahal mo, even if you have a doctor's degree and you don't have the experience of undertaking those disaster management approaches, then liliko na mas experience mas importante. Dahil liliko na si team na tagini siya dyan man maupo siya na director man kwalifika sa tihaja na prohimo pamadagalong na posisyon sa the emergency management type of agency is one of the most important agency in this government. So it deals with the lives of our people. It deals with the support that we need to get, and we need that person to have that know-how to do that approach and requesting for the different agencies within the federal government to support, not only the declaration but the situations that we have on hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Talahi. Senator Castro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in follow-up, I know the HSA wanted to ensure that there was no conflict with the Office of Technology, and Mr. Uggan, I couldn't acknowledge the importance of that any less. I agree with you. I had the privilege to serve as an acting CTO for a short time, and I saw that the CTO and his or her office, was charged with handling all things in general relative to technology, hardware, software, training, and frankly, even having some oversight over infrastructure. But I can share a personal experience in that capacity that I had to tussle with, and that's why hopefully after the 2-3 minute comment, it'll underscore the need for that cybersecurity critical infrastructure component to HSA. We knew of threats to the network. We knew of actual penetrations and intrusions. As a matter of fact, it was made public by all media that 2 government websites in a short amount of time were actually hacked and taken over. So the challenge at the time was, how do we coordinate that with whom? How do we respond? And at the time, at least I was in a quandary if we engaged the FBI. We certainly did engage with GPD, etc. But we know, what little I know about law enforcement, I know that if it was properly nested at the Office of Homeland Security, as an example, with the right subject matter experts assembled like you have, that they would best understand how to handle in terms of the protocol and the level of response based on the level of threat. We know that sexting requires the involvement of the FBI. How do we engage illegal dumping when it's caught on the cell phone? Is that just GPD, or is it both EPA, GPD, and the respective mayor? And so while we don't necessarily have the answer, or I don't, right here, the idea is exactly what one of the panelists had mentioned, to permanentize the structure so that management and the SMEs can respond appropriately and set into motion certain protocols and procedures. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate you for bringing that up. I also want to hark back to an experience we had. I believe one or more of you may have been at the Customs Oceania Conference. I want to encourage everyone in law enforcement to attend the next one. It was a completely mind-blowing experience in terms of the realities of threats that are before us, in terms of the pace of change in transnational crime. Man, my world is defined by what I read in the paper in terms of law enforcement response, but you're talking about concepts like the dark web. You're talking about things, although we hear about Bitcoin and all the goodness that can come from cryptocurrency, there is a completely unknown dimension to the common person about cryptocurrency and money laundering that is not limited to Guam nor the Northern Marianas. In fact, it's regional, international in nature. And I see you acknowledging and nodding your head, Mr. Homeland Security Advisor, and that's one of the pillars, I think, of this bill that you may fully develop in consultation with your law enforcement partners. I know that the advisor from your federal partner, your counterpart, Ms. Egley, she's very versed in this, and she's wholeheartedly supporting the bill because it permanentizes one or more components that's within the GovGuam family so that you can best interface not just with the CNMI, but hopefully in the very, very near future under the current leadership with American Samoa as well. And so, Mr. Chairman, that was my follow-up statement to the need to address that there's no conflict between the Office of Homeland Security, the Division of Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure, and then the Office of Technology. And in no way do I mean to undermine or discount the importance of GPD, Guam Fire, the utilities, or anybody who has a technological dimension to their operation. Rather, it's my goal, as is my colleagues, to ensure that you have the proper mechanism to respond appropriately and continue to protect this great Chamorro nation.
All right, and with that, do you have any more questions, Senator Talahi? All right, thank you for your testimony, and I'd like to allow Senator Castro to close on his bill.
Thank you. Thank you again, Chairman Ridgell, for affording me the privilege of having the bill heard. Thank you, my chairman on Border Security, Senator Talahi, for being a tremendous supporting partner in this bipartisan piece. I want to thank those who took time out of their busy schedule over the months to meet with me, not once but several times. Chris Roberto, George Tsopfris, even Customs and Quarantine Chief Ike Paredo, Colonel Jolian Guerrero from the Unified Judiciary, who's off island, Chuck Estevez, Senor, Mr. Uggan. There are many others in the room who are, or those who are not here, who met with me as well, and I thank you. If I miss your name, please forgive me. Mr. Chairman, there was a first iteration to the bill. I think it's important to know, and that first iteration attempted to do a lot of things. And I understand that putting forward legislation requires compromise. And so the current iteration of the bill is a product of great compromise. What some may dismiss as a simple window dressing and name change really speaks very few about and very little about the true intent that I think Mr. Uggan, the HSA, and yourself, Mr. Estevez, see what is potentially possible, even with the bill in its reduced form. With that said, the second iteration, out of great compromise, and with the input of representatives of the office, the Oficina ni Magahagan Guahan, thank you so much. I failed to include my two colleagues' names, and if they would be amenable on the session floor when the bill is finally put on to the session agenda for action, I will move to have senators, the gentleman, Senator Ridgell, and of course the good chairman of Border, Senator Talahi, to be added. The bill attempts to strengthen what is already in motion. The bill is definitely a reflection of bipartisan work. We hope that by the time it emerges from the committee, it's technically sound and gives us as a territory the proper posture to lean forward to protect this homeland, the homeland of Guahan, this great Chamorro nation, and quite possibly take that lead role that we all know we can and should assume in leading the regional forward in a stronger forward posture against all threats, man-made and natural. Pero din testimonyo Mr. San Nicolas de nansino mensenemo bentino hami para decidi hafa mas malik para itautauta, right? I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. That this bill, as small and insignificant as it may appear, actually speaks volumes about the need for the people of the Guam to define what's in their best interest for themselves. The federal government it should be noted that their representative went on record at a workshop, at a working meeting, supported at least the intent. And so I think our federal partners would embrace us moving forward. Again, thank you. I would be remiss, and I'll say this again on the session floor, to pay tribute to those who've actually set this ball into motion way before my time. Governor Camacho, thank you for the resolution 2003-13 in April of 2003 for establishing that by executive order. Of course, Governor Cavo for moving forward with a very progressive step forward in terms of integrating technology, and now Governor Liu and Lieutenant Governor Tenorio with their visionary team of hardworking professionals, many of whom I know in the room personally. Thank you all for supporting the intent and refining the bill. I want to close by saying thank you. Adios.
Thank you, Senator Castro. The committee will continue to accept any written testimony on Bill 6235 COR within the next 5 business days upon conclusion of today's hearing. Written statements should be submitted within 5 business days from today and may be delivered to my office at 238 Archbishop Flores Street, Suite 906 at the DNA Building in Hagåtña. Statements may also be submitted via email to sen.cridgell@teleguam.net, or you may send it via fax at 671-475-4768. This oversight hearing is now adjourned. The time is 10:07. Thank you.